now available in paperback and e-readers. Spellbound, A Darker Shade of Black. Get your copy today at your favorite online bookseller. One of my viewers wanted me to do a review of the 1992 made-for-TV movie Murder Without Motive. Now, Murder Without Motive is a 1992 made-for-TV movie which details the life of Edmund Eddie Perry, a young black man who had been given the opportunity to go to one of America's most prestigious private schools in New Hampshire, and sadly wound up losing his life tragically on the streets of his Harlem neighborhood when an undercover cop mistook him for being a mugger. Now, this movie was one that really was a fantastic movie for every young black male to go out here and watch, and it's one that I believe every young black male needs to take a look at, because a lot of the things that Edmund Perry was dealing with in his life were things that I myself and my family member was dealing with in her life in the 1980s as we aspired to get out of poverty through education. And there was a lot in this movie that basically reminded me of growing up in the South Bronx as related to being in that time where a lot of parents were out here looking to get their kids on a road to academic success early on in their life, and that's what Edmund Perry's mother was looking to do in this movie. She was looking to get her son on a road to academic success so that he could go on to a road to financial success. Unfortunately, what undermined Edmund Eddie Perry, sadly, was the lack of support from his father and the lack of guidance from his father, because as I was watching the movie, sadly, the father was extremely passive in the background, and as the father was passive in the background, yes, the mother was out here pushing for her kids to get an education in academia, but sadly, the father wasn't giving his son a social education as related to how to navigate life. And sadly, because he didn't know how to navigate life as a man, sadly, what happened with Edmund Eddie Perry is that he began to become a man in crisis as related to dealing with the issues of race and identity as related to success. Now, the father himself had serious issues about being beaten down by the system of white supremacy, and as he was just wallowing in his own self-pity, he wasn't looking to give his son that guidance that he needed, and because his father basically wasn't there to give him that guidance, sadly, what happened to Edmund Eddie Perry is that he started to have a bit of an identity crisis, and he couldn't really see the opportunities being put in front of him. Now, as I was watching this movie, I just really saw a lot of opportunities that Eddie was being given as related to the black man at the school who gave him that opportunity to go to the private school. I mean, he had a lot of self-doubts about his identity. He wanted to stay what they called quote-unquote real as related to the construct of black identity that was created by Madison Avenue and Hollywood as related to being cool and being in the streets, not understanding that being black was not about those things. No, being black was always a foundation in education and about black people looking to move themselves forward. That's always been a part of our culture, but again, Edmund Eddie Perry basically grew up in a time when everybody was thinking about trying to stay so-called authentic to people who really were not really, again, looking out for him. He wasn't thinking about how he was moving, and that was showcased with the Sean character, the white guy in the movie. Now, the Sean character understood the whole concept of knowing how to move, and he understood this because his father possibly taught him how to navigate social circles, and Edmund this guy, again, couldn't see the opportunity that Sean was giving him to give him guidance because he was so caught up in his race that he couldn't see that this white guy was basically looking to give him a hand and also looking to be a good friend. When I look at the Sean character, I didn't see a white guy who was just really like out here. I saw a guy who was really a friend, and a friend who saw a brother out here in this new environment and was teaching him how the game really worked. But sadly, Edmund Perry basically was so caught up in looking for, again, validation and acceptance in the streets, he couldn't really take advantage of the opportunity given him. No, he was so caught up in trying to find, again, his so-called black identity that he basically wound up losing the opportunity as related to going out here and actualizing his potential as a man. That's what was a sad part of this movie as related to Edmund Perry. Edmund Perry, again, he was at this top school, and again, as he was at this top school, he could not really, again, think about how he was blessed. No, he was caught up in just Harlem and the streets, and as he got caught up in Harlem and the streets and caught up in being what he thought was black, sadly he couldn't see the opportunity to again achieve for himself or look out for himself, because he was just caught up in what other people wanted and not really thinking about what he wanted for himself. That was the whole saddest part. Again, he didn't have a good foundation in what it meant to be a black man, even though he had a father in his life. His father was one of these beta males who was disconnected and detached from his son, and so caught up in racism that happened to him that he didn't take the time to teach his son about racism and white supremacy, and even worse, didn't teach his son how to move in social circles. I mean, that was the saddest part for me, is that Edmund Perry didn't think about how he was blessed with this opportunity, how he was blessed with an opportunity to move out of that inner city and start looking to move into another social circle where he could go out here and achieve even greater success than what was in that neighborhood. No, Eddie Perry basically just got caught up in the ideas of what he thought was black reality, and sadly, as he got caught up in those ideals, sadly, what happened to him is what happened to many young brothers during the 1980s when I was growing up. A lot of young brothers missed out on their potential because they were caught up in these social constructs of Madison Avenue and Hollywood as related to the streets, and it's related to being the bad guy and the street guy. And as they got caught up in that foolishness, sadly, they wound up becoming casualties of those streets, just like they presented in the film as related to Edmund Perry's friends. One of them became a baby mama, the other one became a crackhead, and his best friend became a drug dealer. All of them became casualties of the streets, and Edmund Perry had an opportunity to rise above it, but sadly he couldn't rise above it because he had become his own worst enemy. He had become conflicted as related to who he really was, and he was trying to be a version of black that I talk about in my novel, Spellbound. Again, you're looking to fit yourself into a black box that's acceptable to white people because he didn't accept himself. And this is what really messed up a lot of black people in the 1980s. A lot of us were so busy trying to fit ourselves into these black boxes to be acceptable to white people that we weren't living for ourselves. No, we were living to be validated and approved by white people, basically making them into gods. And when we looked to make them into gods, sadly, a lot of us made ourselves into our own worst enemies, the way Eddie Perry basically made himself into his own worst enemy, undermining himself, undermining his own success, undermining his opportunities. I mean, Edmund Perry basically, again, had the world in front of him, and his mother was pushing him for success. But sadly, he didn't have a foundation in manhood or an understanding that being black has nothing to do with the streets or anything like that. No, like the teacher was trying to show him, being black is about you having a good understanding of yourself. This is something my professor in my organizational behavior class told me many years ago, to know yourself. And it's one of those things that has resonated with me over 30 years since I went to Monroe College. You know, you have to have a good understanding of who you are in order to go out here in this world. You have to have a good understanding of who you are as a black person. As you travel in circles, you have to have a good understanding of what it actually means to be black and not put on somebody else's identity. And that's what Edmund Eddie Perry had a conflict with. He wanted to be what he thought was black, and he saw, as he was moving and growing in these circles, he thought people were making him white, but because he was getting an education at this prestigious private school and he was learning a different way of life, he thought that this was white, but this was not white at all. No, getting an education in a top private school, it was something that you use to get a competitive edge, and the connections you get there will help you to be able to grow in life, because that's what the Sean character was trying to do. Help this brother learn how to move in this new social circle so that he could move on. But sadly, when I look at Edmund Perry and his tragic story, it really reminds me of another black man who undermined his own success, actor Jonathan Majors. Now, Jonathan Majors, just like Eddie Perry, basically was a black man set up for success. But sadly, Jonathan Majors, like Edmund Perry, became his own worst enemy. And as he became his own worst enemy, he got caught up in looking for white acceptance, got involved with a low-grade white woman in Grace Jabari. And as he got involved with that low-grade white woman, again, basically put himself on a road to messing his whole career up. I mean, Jonathan Majors was on his way to success, but like Edmund Perry, again, couldn't see the bigger picture. No, that like him, he was basically caught up in his black identity as related to fitting in with white people and looking to, again, gain acceptance from white people. One of the things that undermines black people, again, as related to the system of white supremacy, is that they don't think about getting their own individual success. No, they think about things like being a credit to their people, thinking about things like that. But again, yes, you're going to do things to, again, be a credit to the group, but the whole thing is you have to focus on where you want to go. This is something I basically figured out when I was about 16 years old. When I was 16 years old, I basically figured out if I wanted to go somewhere, yeah, there's things that I'm gonna have to do as related to moving myself forward. And one of the things that you're going to have to do is you're going to have to make some sacrifices. And sadly, Edmund Perry, again, was basically, again, so spellbound about being black, he couldn't make those sacrifices as related to himself. I mean, sometimes, again, you're going to have to sacrifice friendships with people you knew, because these people basically ain't going nowhere, and you don't need them driving you back or holding you back. So you're going to have to cut ties with certain folks, and that's a painful thing to do. You got to cut ties with folks who's in the drug game. You got to cut ties with chicks who's out here in these streets moving, and again, in with social circles with Pookie and them. And you're going to have to cut away from toxic people. That's what I had to do when I changed schools. I had to cut. Even before I went to this other school, I had to get my mind right. I had to get my mind right and realize, you know, there's certain people I can't be out here dealing with. There's certain places I can't be at if I want to get myself going somewhere. Sadly, the Eddie character, his mind wasn't right. Yes, he was academically smart, but mentally his head wasn't in the right place, because sadly he was spellbound, trying to fit himself into this black box as related to this black identity, as related to looking to be acceptable to white people. And what was really sad about this movie is that most of the white people in the movie were basically, they either were completely indifferent to him or they didn't care at all. But he was so caught up in trying to be authentic so-called black and keep it real that he basically, ironically and tragically, became another casualty of that reality. He basically became a casualty of that reality because he didn't have a good sense of self-worth or a good sense of self-discipline. And as he went out here, he didn't think about how he was moving in these streets, because when you're a black man trying to move yourself forward, you have to understand that you have to be careful how you move in these streets. I go back to what Sean was saying in the movie. You gotta watch who you're dealing with, who you're associating with. Really, that reminds me of what Professor Black Truth was saying about Jonathan Majors. In you have to watch how you move as related to this situation, and that's basically was what could have led to a completely different outcome. The viewer wants to know what this family could have done, again, differently to avoid that final outcome. And again, one of the things that this dude, he just, again, didn't have that foundation in understanding what it actually meant to be black. His teacher was trying to teach him, black is not about what you see on these streets. No, black has always been about something different. And that, sadly, he didn't get that lesson from his father, because his father was wallowing in self-pity. But if his father basically took an active role and taught him about manhood, he could have been on a different road to manhood and appreciated the opportunities given him, because his mother was on the right track. But women don't understand how the world works for black men. Only another black man understood that, and sadly, the only other black man who understood how the world worked was his teacher. But he spent more time with his father, who again spent his time wallowing in self-pity. Now, if his father again sat there and taught him about how the world worked, it would have helped him out tremendously. And if his father had taught him how to navigate through his emotions and learn how to, again, not get emotional about everything, because that was another thing that undermined this guy in this movie, was he basically was getting emotional and taking things personal. This is something I myself saw growing up in junior high school and high school. Lots of young black males basically don't know how to let stuff go in order to get where they need to go. I mean, other men of other races, they understand, yeah, this guy might be out here wanting to start something, but I'm not going to finish it because I got a place I want to go. This is something I had to do in my own life. Is like, I'm not going to get into it with this dude and mess up my opportunity. No, I'm trying to get somewhere. So if he can go out here and say what he wants, but I'm just going to let it go in one ear and out the other, and keep my intangibles of manhood, like my dignity, my self-respect, and my freedom. These are things that, sadly, Eddie Perry didn't understand, because he was still trying to so-called keep it real. Because I remember there was one scene in the movie where him and Sean were getting into it with other students, and he starts to start laying hands, and it's over the Sean character, and he didn't understand what the white guy was trying to say to him, because the white guy who was there, that Sean was having the issue with, again, he was just words, but he took it emotional and took it personal, started laying hands on people, not understanding, look, this guy, yeah, he gonna say what he want, but you gotta go out here and let it go in one ear and out the other, because you gotta think about where you wanna go. And the other scene was when they were traveling abroad, and this waiter starts getting snotty or starting to get racist, and instead of, again, just charging it to the game, getting up and going to another restaurant, what happens with Eddie Perry and Sean is they start looking to get into it with this guy who's, again, working for minimum wage and working to get a tip from them. And if this guy wants to, get stupid like that, you just deny him a tip by taking your respect, Again, you don't take your respect by getting into this guy's face or calling the manager. No, the greater statement you can make is to walk out the restaurant and deny this guy an opportunity to get your money. But sadly, because Edmund Perry didn't get that, again, guidance on how to move as a man, sadly, he wound up making mistakes. And sadly, the ultimate mistake was the one he made with that police officer. I mean, there was an opportunity there where the police officer was looking at him and saying, "Oh, you look like a mugger." And again, he basically took it personally. And as he took it personally, he didn't think about the bigger picture. I mean, he had just graduated from a prestigious school. He was being given an opportunity to work for a Wall Street company. He was going to go to Stanford on a full-ride scholarship, but because he didn't know how to navigate through his emotions and understand, look, let me just let this guy go on about his business in this park. Let him go on about his business. It's not my job to change how he thinks. No, it's my job to go out here and have a good sense of self-worth and understand who I am. It goes back to what my professor told me many years ago. You have to know yourself. And this is something I knew even before she told me this, that you have to know who you are. And again, it's not my job to prove to white people or to look to fit into their black boxes about things, because that's giving my power away. And that's what Edmund Perry did that night that led to his death. He gave his power to white people. I mean, this white person basically said, "Hey, you're a mugger." And he basically looked to, again, get violent with this guy. This is what was presented in the movie. He looked to get violent with this white man instead of keeping it moving. Now, anybody who, again, is on a road to academic achievement, one of the things we have to understand, again, I'll repeat it once more, is understand we got to be careful how we move out here, because, again, when you are on a road to academic success, you are going to be dealing with people who are enemies inside and outside of your community. You basically are having no allies. And sadly, Edmund Perry couldn't understand that he didn't understand how to move in these streets. No, any guy who's doing well like he was, again, the last place you want to be is out in the street at night playing some basketball. No, you want to be either at a gym and play ball over there, or you want to be in your house, read some books. That's what you want to do to preserve your freedom. You don't want to be on those streets. That was a mistake that he made, but he was trying to so-called keep it real, and sadly, keeping it real kept everything going real wrong in his life. I mean, he was being given this great opportunity to go to this prestigious private school, and again, he was given an opportunity to, again, go out here and achieve for things, but sadly he didn't have a good sense of self, didn't know who he was. Again, he was doing things for other people, like his mother, doing things as related to that, and he didn't have that good sense of self that like me and my family member had, because my family member was on that road. She was on a road to going to a prestigious prep school like this guy, but sadly didn't get in. But she did go on to other schools, and again, because my father was in her life and my father was in my life, I had a good understanding of what it meant to be a black man. Moreover, I learned from him, and I also learned from being on my own. You know, you have to be careful how you move in these circles. You have to be careful how you move in these circles. You have to watch how you move, and you have to watch the company you keep, because some of these folks out here, they can give you a hand, like the Sean character gave Edmund Perry a hand in the movie, or they can go out here and be a crab in a barrel and drag you down. And you have to be very careful about who you associate with and who you deal with. This was something that I basically started to figure out when I went to that second high school. I had to be careful about who I dealt with. And this is why I kept folks at a distance, because you know, you don't know who is in this drug game. You don't know who's in the gangs. You don't know who's out here doing what. And you don't want to get caught up in some mess with these folks. You don't want to get yourself jammed up and messed up by these folks, by the nonsense they get into. And that's why if you're looking to go somewhere, you gotta watch how you move. You gotta watch how you move in these streets, and you gotta watch what company you keep, because what company you keep can have you in business and moving yourself forward, or that company that you keep can put you completely out of business. And sadly, the lesson here in the movie Murder Without Motive is that if you don't watch how you move, you can wind up where you're moving yourself into a grave, even though you get great opportunities. And again, after I watched this movie, again, it really resonated with me, because I was on that road as related to success, on that road as related to success, and I understood everything this young man went through. I understood the issues as related to race and issues as related to racial identity. I understood this need to try to be what you thought was black, but what that really is not what was black. Again, he was basically confused as related to his identity because he didn't have a good foundation as related to his manhood that was given to him by his father. And because his father wasn't there to give him guidance, basically he was trying to navigate things on his own. And as he navigated things on his own, he was being told, oh, you're being white, and then looked to try to fit himself into being black. And as he looked to fit himself into the stereotypical idea of being black, sadly he wound up a tragic casualty, just like many of the other people in that neighborhood that were presented in that story. And that was the saddest part, again, about this movie, was this guy, Ben, he was dealing with an identity crisis as related to himself, and that identity crisis was the thing that turned him into his own worst enemy. That identity crisis he was having, I mean, he had opportunities put in front of him that he didn't really understand. I mean, he was sitting up there getting upset about things that were really trivial. I mean, I remember looking at one scene where the white girl said that she was scared about having a relationship with him. Well, that's where you just say, okay, I understand that she's scared, so I'm just going to keep the relationship within the parameters that she wants. She wants to, again, go in one direction. I'm going to keep going in the direction I need to go into. Yeah, I gave her a chance to have a relationship with me, but I'm going to move on, because if she doesn't have the courage to stand with me, and she's not going to be there for me, and I need to get where I'm going. I mean, that's something I learned at 16 years old. I got to get where I'm going. And if people don't want to go there with me, then I got to let them go. I mean, that was one of the things I had to do back in '89, where the girl who, again, dissed me came back and wanted to try to talk to me. I just said, look, before I changed schools, left her completely alone. And again, you're going to have to make sacrifices and, again, leave people behind. That's one of those things that you're going to have to do if you want success in life. If people don't want to come with you, you got to let them leave your social circles. That's what Professor Black Truth was trying to tell people about Jonathan Majors. Again, you got to let people go and let them go their way, because you got to think about where you want to go. That's something I understood, again, at 16. Again, you got to think about where you want to move and how you want to move. That's what I would know how to do, but I never got the chance to, because many employers, again, were afraid to take a risk on me. But I know how to move in those circles. I know how to move in and out of circles. That's something that this guy didn't understand. He didn't understand that people are you're going to have to move in and out of places to get where you need to go. And again, the real ones like Sean, you keep around. The real ones who got your back, the ones who looking out for you, you stay with them. But the rest of them, you just have to let charge to the game and be on your way. That's what you're going to have to do out here. And again, the movie Murder Without Motive is a great movie I highly recommend. It deals with a lot of the struggles black men like myself on a road to success have to deal with. It deals with a lot of the struggles we deal with as related to race and identity. I mean, these are things I myself wrote about in my novel, Spellbound, with the Matilda character, who decided to become a part of the goth scene because she wanted to maintain her road to success and maintain her own racial identity as a black person. She understood this identity that they want to put on me is toxic, and I need to walk away from that toxic road. But sadly, a lot of people become casualties like Edmund Eddie Perry, and sadly they become casualties because there's no man there to give them guidance. No, a lot of our black men, again, sadly, either if they do get a job, they get caught up in their feelings about being passed over for promotion and slighted to think, hey, I got a son I gotta teach. I got a son I need to teach lessons about white supremacy and racism. And as I'm out here, I gotta teach them how to move. Teach them how to move because it's not about the white people. Yeah, they're gonna be racist, but I gotta think about how I'm gonna move so that I can move on and be able to maintain taking care of myself and my family. Because yeah, there's gonna be racism, there's gonna be racist, there's even gonna be crabs in the barrel in the black community. But you gotta think about your survival, because the only one person who, if you're a black man, who's gonna take care of you is you, and you've got to learn how to look out for yourself. And that was one of the things that Edmund Eddie Perry didn't know how to do, was look out for himself. He was looking out for everybody else, but he wasn't putting himself first. And that not putting himself first led to him putting himself last. And when he put himself last, as related to being out here, he wanted to again fit into what was being black. And again, he could have avoided this outcome, because again, you don't need to be in them streets if you going somewhere. This is something my mother taught me at an early age. She taught me, don't be in these streets because it can get hot in these streets. And the whole thing is you can wind up losing big opportunities because you got to be out in these streets getting into nonsense that ain't got nothing to do with you. Now, if you want to check out the movie Murder Without Motive, I'm going to leave a link to it in the description box. And I really want to thank the viewer for letting me know about this movie, because this movie really again took me back to my days when I was a kid growing up and being on a road to academic success. I knew all about the struggles this young brother went through because I went through them myself. I mean, I went through people telling me, again, things that, oh, you're not talking black, you're not acting black. And again, looking to try to deal with these struggles as related to things. Again, they want to we fit ourselves into these black boxes that undermine our success. And I looked at this movie and I could relate to a lot of what this brother went through because I went through a lot of it myself. And that was one of the reasons why I wrote the novel Spellbound, because I wanted to talk about those experiences growing up in the 80s. And again, if you want to check out my story, Spellbound, you can check that story out on Amazon.com. It's very similar to Murder Without Motive, but that story ends on a more positive note and shows how the character overcomes looking over all the things that look to undermine foundational black Americans in this country as related to intraracial struggles. Now, again, you can find Spellbound on Amazon.com and all other online booksellers like Draft Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can drop a donation to the PayPal or the Cash App for a minimum of $15. And if I know something about that subject or you want me to look at something, I will make that video for you about whatever subject it is, as long as it's not something about the devil or the orange man or anything sexual. I can make that video for you as long as it's not about certain subjects. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and e-readers, The Temptation of John Haynes. Give in to temptation and pick up this action-packed African-American paranormal romance. Get The Temptation of John Haynes in paperback and e-readers today. Now available in paperback and e-readers, Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer. Take a trip into the macabre world of goth modeling in the new millennium in this spooktacular Spinsterella story. Pick up your copy of Spinsterella Goth Girl Summer in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.